If you're a coach who wants more leads, more clients to double or triple your income, email marketing is an essential skill to master. Over the past 2 years, I've personally used it to sign over $600,000 of coaching clients, and it can be a goldmine for your business if you know how to use it well. I recently ran a live training for our Coaching Launchpad clients where I walked through exactly how I'm using email marketing in my coaching business today to scale past 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70K months. And normally this is something we only share with our private clients, but I wanted to open up the curtain and share this with you for free too. So kick back, grab something to take notes with, and I hope you enjoy this free uncut email marketing training for coaches. So what are you going to learn today? What are we going to focus on today? But really, this is a one-on-one training. So it's designed for the person who's fairly new to email marketing. Maybe you've done a little bit of email marketing before, but you're not like an email marketing pro, or maybe like Nadine, you're just like, hey, I'm completely new to this whole world. These are really the basics on how to do email marketing. There's a lot to this, so I'm going to try to cover as much as possible and make this as relevant to people who are a little bit newer as well as people who are a little bit more experienced. But we're going to focus more on the one-on-one today. And one of the things I really want to spend quite a bit of time talking about is how to grow your email list. So if you're maybe you don't have an email list, or maybe you're just getting started. I know many of you here, it's like maybe I've got a couple of subscribers and it's like my mom and like my aunt, and how do I actually start growing my list, even if I'm right at zero. So we're going to be talking about that. Best practices for nurturing those subscribers to warm them up. So to Ann Lynn's point, like how do you get people to engage? How do you engage with people on an email list so people actually read your emails, and that it actually becomes a tool that you can use to warm people up over time and generate new leads in your business. And the last point I want to mention here is this is really a strategy focused workshop. So we're not going to go super deep into like implementation around tech. The truth is, depending on the tools that you're using, there's, all these principles apply to any email marketing software. We're going to focus on those principles today. And in terms of the implementation side of things, like I always recommend, depending on what tools you're using, like YouTube videos will be helpful with this. Also, all these email platforms, their support is often quite good, especially for new, people who are getting up and running. Their support articles, and oftentimes they have teams that are really designed to help you get up and running. If you're like a new person to their platform, because there's quite a bit of money to be made on their end, over time through having you as a long-term user of their platform. So I would encourage you to lean on those resources in terms of the tech implementation side of things. And today we're really going to be focusing more on the high-level strategy. So why is email more important than ever? And really, to contextualize what's going on here and why we're talking about email marketing, I think, email's been around for so long, right? It's like the OG of the online world. And so many things have changed, over the past few years in terms of social media, but email is kind of this like mainstay that's been around, since really like the 90s. I don't think it's going anywhere. But there have been a lot of changes and a lot of shifts if we look at, other parts of the marketing landscape, particularly with social media, that I think, moving forward, especially heading into 2024 and beyond, I think, a lot of those changes are going to make email marketing more and more important. So probably one of the biggest ones is organic reach on social media continues to decline. So in other words, 5 years ago, you posted something on Instagram, maybe 2-3 times the amount of people saw it that do today. And this is just the nature of what's happening with attention, what's happening with these platforms. Generally, they're becoming more competitive and just harder to connect with people. So if you're 100% dependent on communicating with your audience solely off the back of social, then it's going to become harder and harder to reach those people that you've cultivated and you've built relationships with. Like just for context, the other thing here I'll say on this point, just for context, is just in general, email marketing, like you send an email out to someone, you're going to get a much higher open rate. Maybe 25-30% of the people on your email list might open that email, versus if you post something on social media, maybe 3, 4, 5% of your audience might see it. So just to put that in context, it means that if you're communicating with your audience over email, much more of your audience is actually going to see what you're putting out. Now, that's not to say that social media doesn't have a place. And to Chase's point, how do these pieces play together? I think one of the biggest and most helpful things about social media is probably one of the best ways to get in front of new people who don't know you. people who are encountering you for the first time, because that is where everyone's hanging out, right? So as a first point of contact, I still think social media is a great way to go. But in terms of nurturing and building relationships with your existing audience, I think email marketing is more useful in many ways than just trying to do that over social media. And ideally, like in our business, we do both. So it's not that it's one or the other, it's how do you use these tools together as part of a larger ecosystem in your business, because they're both useful in different ways. The other thing is, you probably noticed this, like social media platforms are coming and going a lot faster than they used to. And everything's changing faster in the world that we're in today. Like I remember when I was in high school, I was a singer-songwriter, and I toured around my town, and I played, shows and sang, music. And I had an audience that I had built up on MySpace at the time, because that was like the cool place to be. And, whenever I was in high school, and I spent all this time trying to grow that audience on MySpace. And many of you know what happened to MySpace. I don't know. I mean, it just disappeared seemingly overnight. And all of those people that I had cultivated those relationships, and all those followers, and all the people that I had connected with went away with it. And I think it's really important to remember that when you are growing a business on the back of social media platforms own your audience. You don't own your audience. Versus when you're doing something like email marketing, you have a more direct line of communication with your people, which means if something happens with TikTok and the US government decides to pull it and suddenly your TikTok audience goes away overnight, at least you don't lose those relationships and those connections that you've built with the people that you've cultivated over time. So I just think in terms of insulating yourself against risk in your business, as well as really capitalizing on the opportunity to be able to connect to your existing audience in a deeper way, in a better way, I think email marketing is more important than it ever has. And I think it's continuing and will continue to be a core pillar for marketing moving into the future. So one question you might have on this, because I know many of you here are newer to building your coaching business, maybe you don't have an email list. One question you might ask yourself is, well, when do I actually start doing this? Like, what's the right time to actually add an email list to my marketing? I feel like maybe I'm overwhelmed just trying to get the basics up and running here. Like, what Jason's telling me, I got to do all these different things. Like, how do I know when this is the right time for me to start integrating this piece into my business? What I typically recommend for people is start by getting traction on social media first, because the best way to start to get attention is to go where people already are. It's like if you move to a new town and you don't know anyone and you want to make friends, you kind of have some different options, right? You could go to the phone book and start calling up random strangers in the phone book and say, hey, come back to my house and let's hang out. And people are probably going to think you're very weird, and you probably aren't going to get many people back to your house. And that's the equivalent of trying to build an email list in the early days of your business. Or you could just go on meetup.com and you could look at all the different groups of people who have interests that are in common with yours. And these are groups that are already established. There are people hanging out, and you can go where those people already are. And that's the equivalent of going on social media and starting your business on social media. If you go to Starbucks and you stand in line at Starbucks and you look at, what everyone's doing while they're waiting in line for their latte, what are they doing? They're staring at their iPhone, looking down and scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or LinkedIn, right? So this is where the attention is. And as a first step in terms of growing your audience and just connecting with new people in your niche, it's far better to just go where people already are. So that being said, recommend you start by getting traction on social media first. And then once you've got some foundational, pieces in place there, then you can start to diversify to email once you're already seeing a little bit of momentum there. The other reason I like doing this is because it's far better to do things like market research and refine your niche on social media than it is to try to figure out this via email. Social media, you're going to get a lot more feedback from your audience. So you can see what lands and what doesn't. You can see what people respond to. It's harder to get that feedback through email, not impossible, but it's just, email is more of a one-way communication, whereas social media is more of a two-way street. So in the early days, when you're really trying to figure out like, what is my messaging and what is my niche and do I have the right offer and how do I know what people are responding to? I think doing more of that work on social media versus, jumping to an email list makes more sense. And then later on, once you feel like some solidity, it's like, I kind of know what I'm doing here, then transitioning to email and adding that on as an addition to what you're doing on social media makes a lot of sense. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this free email marketing training. And if you're wanting to dive deeper, and you want a roadmap that you can follow as a coach to start to sign 2, 3, 4 or more high-paying coaching clients month after month, I recommend that you download our free client attraction guide by clicking the link above or in the description below. So much good stuff in there to help you get clients consistently, and I'd love to share it with you. So click the link above or below to go check that out. And now let's get back to our training. So let's move forward. Platform recommendations. This is something I get asked quite a bit too. What email platform should I use? So many out there, right? Which one's best for me and my business? And you'll have to excuse my dog who's barking in the background, probably because there's an Amazon guy who's delivering some new exciting thing that we bought that we probably don't need to our door. So there's a couple of recommendations here that I have for you. If you're just getting started, I really like ConvertKit. ConvertKit is a really simple, easy to use platform that makes it really easy to just get started. They have a lot of great features that are included, like you can build like landing pages in their software. You can do things like lead magnets with ConvertKit really easily. So for most people who are just getting started, which I would say are most of you here, I would recommend ConvertKit. For folks who are a little bit more experienced, who are doing things like paid traffic or you want like a pipeline, where you can actually manage like your sales calls and you can see like what stage somebody's at in the journey of becoming a client. Like this is what we do in our business because we just have more going on. Like we're doing paid traffic, we have more leads, so it's helpful to have that pipeline view. I recommend ActiveCampaign, and this is the software that I currently use in my business. I've used lots of different email marketing software, and for more advanced people, I find that this is the best way to go. But if you're just getting started, ConvertKit's great. That being said, this is an area where I think a lot of people go down the rabbit hole and spend days and days and days trying to figure out the perfect email marketing software. And the truth is, a lot of these tools, they all work well. So these are my recommendations, but if you're using an existing tool and you're happy with it, I wouldn't go and like switch and change a bunch of things. I would just stick with what you have. And if you are starting from scratch, then, these considerations would be, worth exploring. So first question people often have in terms of email marketing is, how do I actually grow my list? When I first started coaching back in 2016, I had an email list of exactly 0 people and nobody cared about me. Nobody even knew that I existed. And how did I go from that to building an email list of like 50,000 people? Well, it didn't happen overnight, but really the first thing I had to figure out is, how do I get people onto that email list? And this is what I want to share with you here. So how do we actually do that? How do you grow that audience? Well, first thing I want to be super clear about is nobody wants to join your newsletter. I see this all the time on websites. Put in your email address here to join my newsletter. How many times when you see that do you go, oh yeah, I really want to join another newsletter because I'm not getting enough emails and I need one more newsletter. That's really going to be valuable and relevant to me. Yes, let me put in my email address there. So truth is, nobody wants another newsletter. Nobody wants to be just sent emails. So when it comes to growing your list, what you really need is something valuable to offer in exchange for someone's email address. And this is what we call a lead magnet. So essentially what you're doing is kind of like an ethical bribe. It's like, here, I'll give you this thing that you really want, that you're going to find valuable. And in exchange, you're going to give me your email address, which you probably don't even really want to give me, but I'm going to give you this thing in return. So it's going to be worth it. And that's how most relationships start in terms of online marketing. It's usually some level of like reluctant admission, like, okay, I guess I'll give you my email address for this thing that sounds like it's going to be really useful. All of you here, by the way, probably all of you, the first interaction that you had with me was you probably downloaded my free client attraction guide. and you gave me your email address, and I sent you that guide, and then you started getting my emails. And at first you were probably like, who the heck is this Jason guy? I don't know anything about this, and I don't really care. And it sounds like he's probably just some other business coach. And over time, we started to build a little bit more of a relationship, but it started with that lead magnet, right? So, and chances are you wouldn't be here if that lead magnet wasn't something that you really wanted. And if I just went up to you and I was like, hey, join my newsletter, you'd probably be like, no, thanks. And we probably would not be here today. So this is where your lead magnet comes in. And I want to share with you some of the principles to creating really effective lead magnets next. So just to be clear, what is a lead magnet? This is a valuable piece of content that you give someone in exchange for their email address. And I like to think of this as kind of like a first date content. Like if you're going out on a first date with someone, you don't really know them that well. Chances are that first date, you're probably not going to get into like, you know, the details about like all the trauma you experienced in your childhood and, you know, what your dad said to you when you were 4 and all that stuff. It's just like lightweight, kind of fun, helpful, valuable, you know, useful content, but it doesn't go super deep. So we want to think of it like, how do you give someone that they're, you know, something that they're going to find useful and valuable, but it doesn't require a lot from them. I think this is where a lot of people get lead magnets wrong. They're like, I just want to like give more. You know, here's this 12-hour training that you can get for free. But if I have no idea who you are, I'm probably not going to want to sit through like 12 hours of your trainings, but probably willing to like read a quick little PDF guide that I can just like skim through on my phone. It only takes me like 30 seconds. And if it's not useful, I didn't really waste any time, right? So we can kind of think of it like this first date offer, first date approach. And you know, really the big goal here is that this is something that's valuable to people, something that's bite-sized so they can, you know, consume it quickly, and something that positions you as an expert so that they're going to want to pay attention and keep paying attention. You know, that's really the goal. Like if you can accomplish those things, you're good. So we talked about my client attraction guide. You know, many of you, probably most, if not all of you, are here because you downloaded that guide. And so an example of what this looks like, you know, here's the guide itself. Many of you probably remember this. You probably looked at it. Maybe you even didn't. A lot of people just, you know, opt in for the guide and then they never even read it, which is fine to me because now they're on my email list and I can still build a relationship with them that way. But this is basically, you know, my client attraction guide. So it's and we can talk a little bit more, and we'll talk a little bit more in a second about, you know, what I put in this guide. But it's, you know, maybe 20 pages, and someone could probably go through this in like, you know, 5-10 minutes. It's pretty simple. And this is the landing page for that guide. And we'll talk about landing pages in a second. So you probably, maybe you remember this, maybe you don't, but all of you probably went to this page at some point. Maybe you clicked an ad or something, and then you click this button, get the guide, and put in your email address, and then you got the guide. And now you are on my email list. So this is basically how this works. So some details on lead magnets. How do you actually put something like this together? Well, the first thing you're probably going to want to figure out is what to talk about in the lead magnet, your topic. Like, what is a lead magnet actually going to cover? Biggest recommendation I have for you is just to make it juicy. Like, this has got to be something that someone is going to want to give you their email for. It has to be something that's valuable and useful enough to your niche that they're going to be willing to exchange something of value to them, which is their email, for that thing. You know, whenever you're asking for something in terms of your marketing, I think there's a big principle in marketing. There's always like this, I think of it like if you ever imagine like one of those scales where it's like you kind of weigh things, and on one side you've got like one side of the scale, and one side you got the other side of the scale, and you kind of balance things out on the scale. I think of marketing this way, which is whenever you're asking for somebody to do something, on one side, it's what are they going to get in return? And on the other side, it's what are you asking them to give? And someone is only going to do something if they feel like what they're going to get is more valuable or more useful or worth more than what you're asking them to give. And sometimes that's their email address. Sometimes that's their money. Sometimes that's their time. But the principle is always the same. So we always want to be thinking about that. Like on one hand, you're asking for somebody's email address. They probably know they're going to get a bunch of emails from you that they don't really want. And on the other side, you're giving something to them. So it has to be juicy enough to balance that out to the point where someone's like, yes, I want to do this. So, my client attraction guide, it's like how to sign 2 to 4 new coaching clients every month. For most of you, that's pretty valuable. That's useful enough to say, I want to learn how to do that. Like I'm willing to give you my email address for that. In terms of your niche, obviously it's not going to be a client attraction guide for most of you here. For some of you, it might be, but generally what I recommend is tying into your niche's biggest pain point or desire. So asking yourself, what is that number one pain point that my niche is experiencing? And most of you here at this point have already done your market research, so you probably know what that is. And we can go back to that and say, okay, how can you build this lead magnet around that? That's usually a good way to go. So when I did my market research and started talking to coaches, 8 out of 10 coaches, when I asked them, well, what's your number one biggest challenge? They said, I just need to get clients, Jason. I'm struggling to get clients. So of course my lead magnet was a client attraction guide. We always want to go back to like, what does your niche really want and need? And how can you create things of value that tie into those existing desires and those existing pain points and challenges and problems? Also positioning your lead magnet to attract the exact kind of person that you really want. I think this is really important. Just because a bunch of people are downloading a lead magnet doesn't mean it's the right people. So you have to ask yourself, what is my niche, my specific ideal client within my niche gonna like, what type of thing are they gonna really want? And how can I use this guide to kind of pull out the right person and also to disqualify or turn the people away who aren't going to be a good fit. So as an example, 95% of my business is working with new coaches, coaches who are just getting started. If I were to put together a guide that was like how to build a multi-7-figure coaching business in 90 days, most of you probably would not have downloaded that because it's like 10 steps beyond where you are today. But how to sign 2 to 4 new coaching clients, if you're just getting started, that feels like a realistic and attainable goal. And so that's going to call out the specific kind of person who's maybe a little bit newer on their journey, who's just getting started. So there's a lot of intentionality around how I've framed and positioned this lead magnet, because I know the people that I want to attract to this lead magnet are new coaches, because that's why, we have Coaching Launchpad, right? So it's an offer for new coaches. I want new coaches to download my lead magnet. So really thinking about how can you structure that lead magnet or put together that lead magnet so it's going to attract the type of people that you want. One thing I love doing, if you have a couple different ideas that maybe you're not sure, like, well, which one is going to be relevant to people or which one's going to be the juiciest, is just test these things on organic. Like you can just put together like a post on social media and say, hey, I'm putting together a free resource to help X do Y. Like I'm putting together a free resource to help women lose 20 pounds in the next 90 days. Like who wants it? And just see who replies. And you can use that as a way of testing a couple different options. And the one that gets the most replies, in most cases, that's going to be the best one, right? And finally, in terms of putting together your lead magnet, just remember your headlines and your titles, like what the thing is actually called, is probably like 80% of the success of the lead magnet itself. I think what I see with most people, and this doesn't just go for lead magnets, it goes for pretty much everything, in terms of content creation. I see a lot of people, and I do this too. It's like we spend a lot of time focused on how do we create the best possible thing? How do we write the best possible post? And then the headline or the thing that we name it is like the afterthought. When in reality, like 80% of whether or not someone's going to download the thing is just based on what it's named. So you could have the best guide in the world, but if you skimp on the title, then you're leaving a lot of money on the table. So making sure that those headlines, those titles, whatever you call the thing, is really juicy and is going to be, something that your people really want. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this free email marketing training. And if you're wanting to dive deeper and you want a roadmap that you can follow as a coach to start to sign 2, 3, 4 or more high-paying coaching clients month after month, I recommend that you download our free client attraction guide by clicking the link above or in the description below. So much good stuff in there to help you get clients consistently, and I'd love to share it with you. So click the link above or below to go check that out. And now let's get back to our training. So for those of you who are here, I want to hear maybe a couple different ideas that you have for potential lead magnets for your audience. So raise your hand, hop in, and let me know what's coming up for you. What ideas do you have? AD.
I'm thinking something like a caregiver roadmap with some practical tips for things that people need to, that will help them in their caregiving journey.
And remind me of your niche again.
I'm still doing some research, but working with professionals who are also in a caregiver role, looking after aging parents, for example.
Got it. Good. And what would you say is the main benefit or outcome that those tips would lead to or would help that person with?
To help them know where to start with their planning, because there's so much that they have to take care of, and often they just don't even know where to go to begin getting extra support.
And is there an emotion associated with that they're feeling?
Fear.
Fear. Okay. Maybe some overwhelm, I'm hearing too.
Yeah.
A lot of different pieces.
And also sometimes a little resentment.
Good. Cool. Yeah, I think this is good. So maybe it's like an overwhelm buster for caregivers or something like that. So whenever we can tie into the emotions and either the pain points or those core desires, I think it's going to make something more attractive. Because remember, people don't want tips, right? They don't want a roadmap. What they want is where that roadmap is going to take them. So it's the difference between me saying, here's a marketing guide for coaches versus here's a client attraction guide, or here's how to sign 2 to 4 new coaching clients. We're always talking about what's that end goal, or what's the outcome, or what's the result of applying the thing. So I think you're on the right track here. I appreciate you sharing. We'll do one more. Chase.
So I'm thinking about doing a short 3 to 5 minute video talking about the things that come up before a corporate escapee is really ready to take the leap away from a decent, nice paying corporate role into exploring building a business. So I haven't quite got there yet, but I'm thinking about using some of the marketing tools and techniques and focus on not only what they have to consider, basically what that pain would be, what that cost of an action would be, and tie it to what the result would be on the other side of them overcoming that, and just having just a quick 3 to 5 bullet points in a 3 to 5 minute video format.
Yeah, I like that. And for everyone who's here, Chase, can you remind us who is your niche specifically? Because I think this will be helpful for everyone to hear.
Yeah, I help corporate professionals leave corporate and build a business quickly instead of finding another job.
Good. Yeah. So what I really like about what you just shared is that it's really speaking to that person who's like right on the edge of taking that leap. And the way that you position that is going to call that person who's like, maybe thinking about making that transition forward. So this is when we talk about like, how can you create lead magnets that are positioned to attract the exact kind of people that you really want? I think Chase did a really good job at this. And this is definitely something that all of us can be thinking about in terms of creating our lead magnets. So moving forward here, one question you might have is, what's the format? What's best here? Should it be a video? Should it be a guide? There's no like right or wrong here. I think the general principle is, remember, going back to this whole idea of making it like first date content, I would say make it something that's lightweight and quick to consume and easy to consume, and easy also in the sense that it's not going to waste somebody's time if it's bad. I think this is like It's kind of like if you're going out on a first date. Here's an analogy. If you're going out on a first date with someone, you've never met them before, you probably don't want to go to like a fancy dinner and sit down with them for 3 hours. You probably want to do coffee, right? Because the worst thing that happens if the date's terrible, you only have to spend maybe 30 or 45 minutes there, and then you can say, some excuse and you can be off to something else. Versus a dinner, you're probably roped into hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. Same thing goes for lead magnets. So we want to think about this okay, if I'm on the other side, maybe I've never met you before. I don't want to spend a lot of time with you because I don't know whether or not this is going to be worth it. So create an experience that will allow me to get to know you with low risk, meaning the worst thing that happens is I waste a couple minutes of my time, but I'm not locked into some hour-long training or something like that. So guides are my favorite for this because I think they do a really good job at creating this. In other words, someone could just kind of scroll through and skim through a guide really quickly, and it's really easy for them to do that, and it doesn't take a lot of their time. Checklists, case studies, you can do things like short videos to Chase's point, but I would keep it on the shorter side, and just remember, make it something that is going to be lightweight, and at the same time something that's valuable enough for them to want more. We want someone to walk away from this experience feeling wow, that was useful, and now I want to pay attention to you. That's the feeling you want to give someone. Now, in terms of creating these, I recommend that you keep it super simple. I used Google Docs and Canva to create my cover, and literally no tech. I didn't hire anybody. It was incredibly simple. This was a template. The cover was I just went on Canva. For those of you who have never used Canva, it's a really great tool to design quick social media graphics and things like that. It makes it really easy and I just scrolled through and I just found a template and just plugged in, the title of the guide, and then put a picture in the background. And the rest of this is just on Google Docs. And you can do something like that, really simple. So it does not have to be anything crazy. I would just keep it simple, and you can always, go more complex over time. Anybody have any questions overall about building their lead magnets?
I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
So I know that you mentioned the difference between using different services like ConvertKit or ActiveCampaign. ActiveCampaign may be better for whenever you need to have more of that CRM type of approach. Do you recommend just sticking with one for the whole time, or I know that you mentioned something about maybe going with ConvertKit once you started to scale and you need to have the email going, and then transition to something like ActiveCampaign when you need more visibility into the process? Or did I could not tell if you were trying to say just stick one until you're ready to up level, or just stick one for your whole journey?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, generally, the way I think about this is, first of all, it's actually not that difficult to transition from one email platform to another platform. It is a little bit more difficult if you have a lot of saved information in that platform that's kind of specific to that platform. But if you're just storing email addresses and first names, it's basically just as simple as exporting your email list and just importing it into another tool. So it's actually quite easy in most cases to just move your list over to another platform later on. That being said, I would also think about and this is my general philosophy for choosing platforms, because I've gotten myself in trouble in the past by doing this. Sometimes it's easy to just start with something that's free, or something that's the cheapest option, and then you start building on that platform, and then suddenly you've spent a whole bunch of time creating whatever it is you've created on that platform. But then as you start to grow, that platform starts to show its limitations, and you end up kind of locked into this system because moving it or migrating it somewhere else would just be a huge headache. For example, we use Leadpages for our landing pages, and I don't really like Leadpages. I think it's a decent tool for basic lead page, landing pages, but we've outgrown it at this point. But we have so many landing pages that we've created that are still being used in there that to migrate to a new tool would just be a headache. So now we're kind of stuck with this tool that doesn't really work all that well, but it's like good enough. So we're not really changing it because there's not like a huge amount of pain around it. So I would say thinking like 6 to 12 months ahead in your business when it comes to choosing tools and asking yourself, like, where am I going to be like a year down the line? And is this still going to serve me? Or do I need to start with something that maybe is a little bit more like heavy duty, which might be a little bit of overkill for like right now in this moment, but is going to better equip me for scale and for being able to grow into the next stage of my business, so I don't end up in a situation like what Jason described on that one email marketing training call. Does that help, Chase?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think I got what I needed. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So at this point, hopefully, after some time, you've built your lead magnet. You got something really juicy that people really want. The next thing is you need a landing page, which is a page that somebody can go to in order to sign up for it and to give you their email address. That's what a landing page is. So example of this, I showed this to you earlier. All of you pretty much who are here at one point saw this landing page. We run a lot of like paid traffic and we send paid traffic to this page. And so a landing page is basically, this is what a landing page looks like. There are obviously different ways it could look, but this is one example. Super simple, super clean. And there's basically only one thing that people can do, which is click a button and put in their email. Or sometimes the email is actually just, there's a form field on that page and they can put in their email. Now, why is a landing page important? Why don't you just kind of put together like another page on your website for something like this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first thing, probably the biggest thing, is landing pages are really designed to force somebody to take one option, which is to do the thing that you want them to do. If somebody goes to my website, as an example, there's like, 5 different things they can click up here. They can go down, they can, check the testimonials. They can do like 20 different things. And as a result, people are going to do all sorts of different things when they go on a page like that, versus what we want them to do when they come to our landing page is we want them to click the link and download the guide and put in their email address. So landing pages are really designed to remove all other options and to create a simple, clear path forward for somebody, which is why you won't see any, links to any other pages on my website or any other places that basically can distract people and pull people away from taking the action that I want them to take, which is in this case, downloading the guide. Probably the most important piece of a landing page. In terms of creating landing pages, there's a couple of keys to success. And, just for context, like, you can typically create these pages in most email marketing platforms. Like ConvertKit has a built-in landing page builder that has like templates, so makes this stuff super easy. You don't need to be like a web designer or have any like fancy experience. ActiveCampaign also has one. You can also use like a third-party service, like we use Lead Pages, which again, I wouldn't entirely recommend based on what I just shared. It's okay for like, basic pages like this. There's a couple of other like services out there that are like separate landing page builders that just do landing pages. For most of you, pretty much all of you here, I would say just start with the built-in landing page builder in your email marketing software. That's more than enough for most people to get started. So you can do something like this in ConvertKit, and they usually have some templates that make it really easy. And all you have to do is like plug in the name, and the headlines and your, specific copy. And that's pretty much all you need to do. So all this being said, in terms of creating landing pages, there's a couple things to pay attention to. The first thing is you want to make sure that you really like focus on the benefits and make this really juicy, so that when people come to this page, they're like, yes, I want to do this. Like the big headline here is how to sign 2 to 4 new coaching clients every month. Very juicy, very specific, very tangible, right? So that's a claim, that's a promise that is going to be attractive to people who are in my niche. Obviously, it's going to look different for your niche, but figuring out what is that headline that's going to get somebody to say, yes, this is what I want. Also, we talked about having that distraction-free design. So not including like a bunch of links where people can click off and do other things. Just really having that one option so that you're really just directing somebody to do exactly what you want them to do, which is to get the lead magnet. Also really important, button above the fold. So if we look at this here, and this is actually more relevant in many cases on like a mobile phone, but you'll notice that somebody doesn't have to scroll down in order to click this button, right? They go on the page and this button's right there. Versus if I have to scroll, if I have to hunt for a button, you've probably already lost me. So we want to make sure that any button that someone needs to click, or if there's a space for somebody to put in their email address, that is what we call above the fold. And the fold is the bottom of the page. Basically, when you pull up a page, the part that basically shows up before you have to scroll, that's everything above that is above the fold. We want to make sure that the button that you have, or anything that someone needs to click, or any information they need to put in, that all of that is above the fold. Also, make sure that your landing pages look good on mobile. So you want to check this stuff on your iPhone or on your Android. 90% of the traffic that you're probably going to get to your landing page, especially if you're posting this kind of stuff on social media, is going to be from mobile. So a lot of people make the mistake of building their landing pages on their computer, and they look really great on the computer. But then when I pull it up on my iPhone, it's like I got to scroll like way down to find the button, or there's all sorts of like weird formatting things, and the way that things are laid out just doesn't look good or doesn't make sense. So I would say taking a mobile first approach to designing your landing pages, which means, really checking in. And a lot of these tools, these landing page builders, ConvertKit, and a lot of these other tools will actually allow you to like preview how your page looks on a mobile device, just like in the landing page builder itself, even if you're doing it on a computer. But even if you don't have a tool that does that, you can just take the link and just bring it over to your phone and just pull it up and make sure before you publish anything that it also works and looks good on mobile. Now, one question people often ask is, how much information do I collect? Like, I see landing pages where I just have to put in my email address. I see landing pages that ask for 12 different pieces of information. What do I do? How much information do I collect? General rule is the more information you ask for from someone, the less likely they're going to be to actually sign up and do the thing. So you're going to have higher conversions if you remove those barriers and that resistance by basically asking for as little information as possible. So what we do is we ask for somebody's first name and their email address. And I like having someone's first name because when I send emails out in my email marketing, I can, put in their first name and make it a little bit more personalized. That's useful and helpful. I think that's worth having. I would recommend just first name and email address. I don't think you need for like front end landing pages, I like that are lead magnets. I don't think you need to collect any more information than that. And then finally, don't forget the thank you page. So after somebody actually opts in to download the guide, what are we doing on the thank you page? This is like prime real estate that a lot of people don't take advantage of. In my case, what I do is I basically pitch them to join our Facebook group. And this is how I have grown my Facebook group to 15,000 plus people. Is we run paid traffic to the landing page for the free guide, and then as soon as somebody opts in to download the guide, then they get this pitch to join our Facebook group, and then they can go in and go click over and join the group. And the nice thing is now I've got them in two places that I can communicate with them instead of just one. So they're on the email list, but they're also in the Facebook group, and I've got more touch points to be able to communicate. So you might do something like this. You might just invite somebody, like this is a great place to invite them to like a free training, or maybe embed like a link to a pre-recorded piece of content that you can share with them. Like, you have to remember, when someone hits that thank you page, they're warm. They've just opted in to download like a free guide of yours. This is someone who's interested. So we don't want to just end that communication right there. We want to provide some way of deepening that relationship and that connection. So don't forget the thank you page. I think it's really important. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this free email marketing training. And if you're wanting to dive deeper and you want a roadmap that you can follow as a coach to start to sign 2, 3, 4 or more high-paying coaching clients month after month, I recommend that you download our free client attraction guide by clicking the link above or in the description below. So much good stuff in there to help you get clients consistently, and I'd love to share it with you. So click the link above or below to go check that out. And now let's get back to our training. So that's pretty much it in terms of landing pages. Any questions about anything we've covered on the landing page front before we move on?
Yeah, I got a quick question about the thank you page. So
Sure.
you created your Facebook group. Now, did you already have that kind of get traction and do that organically and actually have some momentum going and have some stuff in there that was already juicy before using a thank you page to direct more traffic there once they opted in? How did you think about that just starting out?
I did. I probably had a couple hundred people in the group before we did, any paid traffic or anything like that, and we started using an approach like this. I've also worked with people where we just set up the Facebook group as like, if it is a Facebook group, we just set it up as like a brand new group. And, I wouldn't recommend a Facebook group for most of you here. I would say based on the stage that you're at, I would say probably a better thing to put on the thank you page would be like a free training or like something that can kind of warm them up a little bit more versus like another place that you've got to maintain. In our case, it just worked because I already had the group and it just kind of was a clean tie-in to like what we were doing. But honestly, we've been talking about doing trying to test, just doing like a long form training on the thank you page and seeing how that does. Because we're not getting like a ton of traffic and trying to momentum from our Facebook group right now. So that's kind of how I think about this. I don't think there's like a right or wrong here, but I wouldn't recommend like starting a group specifically for many of you who are here who are using organic traffic to grow your lead magnet. The volume is going to be much lower. So you might just have like a trickle of people going into the Facebook group versus what we're doing with the paid ads. Like there's much higher volume, so it makes more sense. I think you're better off like just having like a free training or like an embedded video or something like that on the thank you page. Dima.
I think you kind of answered my question, but if I'm using a masterclass as a lead magnet, can the thank you gift be a small guide or another but smaller mini training? I
would do it the opposite way. I think a masterclass is you can do a masterclass for like a lead magnet, but I think it's deep content for like a lead magnet. I'd rather see you put together some kind of like a free guide or something that's a little bit more lightweight. And then on the thank you page, you can embed the masterclass. I think that would work better for you.
Okay.
You could do it the opposite way too. I'm not saying that it's not useful as like, I think both can work, but this would probably be what I would do if I were in your shoes.
Okay. Or it could be a lightweight training because the more I work on my masterclass, the more I realize that it's a lot of work for it to be a lead magnet. Yeah.
Well, and your first one's going to feel like a lot of work too. And it gets easier for sure over time. Generally, like something to keep in mind is it's like when you're getting to know someone, there's kind of like an escalation that's happening. So as someone gets to know you a little bit more, like we start offering like longer and deeper content versus the other way around. It's like, after you've been on like 3 or 4 dates with someone and you're really like warming up to them, you probably don't go back to like a 30-minute coffee date. You probably go on like, more like excursions and deeper experiences. It's the same principle. So generally we want to kind of move in that direction of like more depth and more length and more intimacy and less like, well, you have this free 1-hour training and now we're going to go back to like a free guide. Just doesn't entirely make sense in terms of like the journey of somebody getting to know you.
Makes sense.
Thank you. Cool. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Any other questions about landing pages before we move on? Cool. So let's talk about inviting people to your lead magnet. So now at this point, you've got your lead magnet, you've got your landing page. The next question you probably have is, okay, well, how do I get people on the landing page who are actually going to sign up for this? There's really two ways to do this: content and conversations. So content is starting to integrate that landing page and your lead magnet into the content that you're creating and putting out, typically on social media, to your existing audience. This is when you can put, like, in your bio line on Instagram or on whatever platform you're on, like, definitely would want you to put your lead magnet in that place. That's a great place to have a lead magnet. Bottoms of posts, so you can talk about this as like an invitation at the bottom of your content. On your website, another great place to put your lead magnet. At the ends of lives and long form trainings, you can also include this or pitch this. When being interviewed on podcasts, if you are doing any kind of partnership type stuff, this is always what I recommend, like having some kind of like freebie or some resource that you can pitch at the end of those interviews. Works really well. And then later on, you can do stuff like what we're doing right now, where you run ads to the landing page. Again, I think for pretty much everyone here, I think it's too early for that, but there's something that later on, starts to make more sense. So that's content, really integrating that landing page into the content that you're creating and into your presence online. And you do a good job at that, especially in your bio line and things like that. If you're creating that grow content, you've got new people coming into your audience on a regular basis. People are naturally going to be curious. They're going to check that out. They're going to sign up. You might not see like a massive volume of people, but you're going to see people trickle in and you're going to start to grow your list. The other thing that I did, my first coaching business that was, I started in 2016. I launched a YouTube channel. Excuse me. And in the beginning and end of every video, I pitched my lead magnet in every single video. And that was how I grew a list to, I think it was like 40 or 50,000 people. All it was creating one new YouTube video every single week. And in the beginning and the end of that video saying, hey, I've got this free resource. Like, do you want it? And I didn't do any paid traffic, built that list entirely organically. So you don't need paid traffic. You can definitely do this through content as well, organically. The other great way to do this is through conversations. I think just in general, like, conversations are such a great needle mover for us in business. I don't think we lean on them enough. Most of you here, I think, can be doing more to open up conversations with people, either in your existing audience or people who don't know you. I love lead magnets for cold outreach. We talked about this in our outreach guide and in some of the sample conversations in the portal. But if you're reaching out to somebody who has no idea who you are, lead magnet could be a great way of starting to open up that relationship, rather than most of the DMs that you and I get that feel really salesy and, like, just gross. It's like, hey, here's our offer. Here's the price point. Do you want it? And you're like, well, hold on. You have no idea who I am. You have no idea whether or not I have a problem that you can help with. This is why cold outreach doesn't work, because it's like trying to find like the 0.1% of people who are like ready to buy in that moment, versus you'd have much better luck if you just reach out to a bunch of people in your niche and start a conversation and ask maybe some questions. Be like, hey, what I did when I first started coaching other coaches, my first 9 months of my coaching business, I built using this way, got to like 10K a month doing this. I would just reach out to 25 coaches every single day and send messages. I'd be like, hey, I checked out your profile, really cool work you're doing. Like, how long have you been coaching for? And we started conversations and I was like, oh, how are things going? And I started asking some questions. And for the coach who was talking to me, that I uncovered that they were having some challenges getting clients or growing their business, I'd be like, hey, I got this free training or this free, guide that walks through a lot of the details on how I help clients do this and how to get more clients. Like, is that something that'd be relevant for you? Do you want me to share a link? And they'd be like, yeah, of course. And I'd be like, okay, well, here it is. And that's a great way of just like, it's not sexy. It's not like a funnel, but it's like a very great way of growing an email list. So you can definitely do something like this, and that works extremely well. It doesn't work for every niche, but it works for a lot of niches, and definitely something that you can do. So really coming back to these two pillars, we've got content and conversations, two two basic ways that you can invite people to your lead magnet. And also in terms of outreach and conversation specifically, want to direct people back to our outreach guide in the portal and our sample conversations. Both of those things you can find in the portal that will help you in terms of the framework of how to have those conversations. I think those would be very useful if you're someone who is considering integrating outreach as a part of your marketing process, specifically when it comes to lead magnets and things like that. All right, any questions y'all have about this part of the process? Chase.
So I'm using two call to actions because I'm using two different places for marketing. Partnerships for growth, directing them with a call to action to LinkedIn. Because I mean, if they're already sitting through an hour dinner meeting with me or a presentation, I figure they're already pretty warm. And then the call to action on my nurture content on LinkedIn, it's literally that custom business analysis, one-on-one type of free approach, which is essentially a sales call. So where would somebody like me who doesn't really have that, I'm not using the same social media platform and I have to already use a second call to action to get them going, where might I be able to embed this into that marketing plan? The call to action for a lead generator or for this like a guide or whatever we're talking about here.
Yeah. So these are you're doing partnerships. These are like you're getting in front of other people's audiences. And we're talking about the call to action off the back of them right now. At least what you're doing right now is inviting people back to LinkedIn to follow you on LinkedIn. That's
correct,
the invitation.
Because my nurture is on LinkedIn. Yes.
Got it. Okay. I would recommend like lead magnet, email marketing over LinkedIn. If you're going to send someone somewhere, I'd much rather send them to email than to a social media platform. For all the reasons that we talked about in the beginning of this training, you're going to be able to connect with them and, you know, at like the open rates are going to be much higher. I'd probably replace the LinkedIn invitation with just like the lead magnet and just get them on the email list. And I'd probably say for people who you're doing like an hour-long training or something for, this is where I think it's helpful sometimes to have like dual call to actions. Like if you're doing like an hour-long masterclass for like another audience or something, there's probably going to be certain people in that audience who might be warm enough after that training to be ready to take that next step to like talk about hiring you. So I'd probably say like at the end of a training or something, I'd be like, excuse me, be like, look, you know, some of you here might be at that place where you're ready to get some help with this and you're ready to explore the possibility of working together. And if that's you, you know, go to this page, book a call with me, whatever it is. And some of you might be like, hey, this was really valuable and helpful and useful, and I'd love to stay connected and I'd love to dive a little bit deeper. I don't think I'm ready for that, you know, next step yet, but I want to, you know, I want to learn more. And if that's you, then we've got this incredible free resource, this free guide or this free, you know, training to, you know, help you with XYZ, and you can go here. So you can kind of give people like two paths. It's a little bit more advanced, and I don't recommend it in most cases, but if you're doing like long form content for partnerships, I think that approach can work well, because then you can, it's kind of like the fast lane and the slow lane. You've got people who are, credit to my mentor, Scott Oldford, who kind of talks about this. Like you've got people in the fast lane, you've got people in the slow lane. People in the fast lane who are like ready to go, you want to give that person an option to work with you and take that next step that's going to be appropriate for them, versus the people who are in the slow lane. You also want to provide an option for them. So you're, you know, you're kind of playing more of the long-term game with that person. Does that, how does that land for you?
You know, I love that actually. So essentially we're treating LinkedIn as, you know, an echo chamber. And instead of bringing in new blood into it, we're bringing that new blood to that lead magnet and putting them right into that funnel. I really love that. Thank you, Jason.
Sure. Yeah. Glad that landed. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Any other questions about any of this before we move on? Okay, let's keep going. So at this point, we've got the lead magnet, we've got the landing page, we've got ways that you're integrating this into your marketing. So you should start to see your email list grow. And it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen very quickly at first. I remember, you know, my first few weeks, months, even, you know, years of my coaching business, it was like a little trickle at first, but then, you know, maybe like 1 to 2 people a week. And then suddenly it was like 3 to 4 people a week. And suddenly it was like 10 or 12 people a week. And it grows bit by bit as you start to show up in more places and as everything that you do starts to compound. But it's not going to happen overnight. So just remember, it starts with this a bit of a trickle, and then it grows. But the next question you might have is, okay, well, I've got people on my email list. How do I actually connect with them and communicate with them? What are the ways that I can use this as a tool to be able to really nurture and grow those relationships? I think people get really complicated with this stuff. There's lots of things that you can do in terms of email marketing, fancy automation and systems and tagging and all this crazy stuff. You pull your hair out trying to build all these things. I recommend keeping it super simple. And the structure that I recommend, this is the structure that I use right now in my business. And this will take us to 7 figures. So it's super simple. It works very well. There's really 3 pieces. Number 1 is what I call a welcome sequence, which is when somebody joins your email list, it's a specific set of emails that they receive that every new subscriber receives. That's basically what a welcome sequence is. So that's number 1. Number 2 is what I call the newsletter pool. So once somebody gets that welcome sequence, then they get put into a big pool with all the other people who have been through that welcome sequence. And then they start getting regular emails from you that you're sending out to broadcasting to your list on a weekly basis. And then finally, every 6 to 8 weeks, you can do like some kind of launch. And that could be like a masterclass. That could be, maybe a promo for your offer. It could be something that, is more of an event. But we have some kind of launch event that we're doing maybe every 6 to 8 weeks. We're not going to go into like the details on doing launches in this training. It's really beyond the scope of what we're covering today. But these 3 pieces are really like the core components of what I do for email marketing. And this has worked really well for us. And what I would recommend for you. And it's really simple to set this stuff up. So the first thing is welcome sequence. We talked about what this is, right? It's basically every new subscriber who signs up to your email list, regardless of when they sign up. It's a series of emails that you put together that go out to that person and every new person who subscribes to your list. And the goal of these is basically to introduce someone to you. So someone who has no idea who you are, maybe they just clicked your lead magnet, now they're on your email list. We want to kind of warm them up and also establish your positioning as an expert. So someone who might not know a lot about you, they want to see these emails and start to feel like, wow, this person who really knows their stuff. Like this is someone who I should probably pay attention to. Also, we want to deliver a ton of value in these first few emails. Best way to get somebody to pay attention is just keep giving. The more you give to people, the more they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much value here. Like I got to read every single one of your emails because every email that I read, I feel like I walk away with something useful. So the best way you can make somebody pay attention is just by giving and giving and giving. And this is going to make them want to keep paying attention to you. So that's really the goals of our welcome sequence. And I recommend 5 to 7 emails sent over the first week. There's not like a hard line on that. There's not like a rule, but I find that works pretty well. And again, going back to our dating analogy, I recommend that you think of this like if you were dating someone in your niche and you were just going out on a first date and then maybe a second date and a third date and just getting to know someone who is brand new to your world, how would that conversation unfold? How would you warm that person up to you? We all kind of intuitively know how to do this. We all know kind of what that conversation would look like. Like it would probably start with some kind of an introduction, like sharing a little bit more about like who you are. And I'd probably start by saying, here's some cool free resources that I think would help you and just trying to be valuable and useful and all of those things. But there's something about email marketing and something about marketing in general. I think that we forget about like what it means to be a human when it comes to marketing. And somehow it's like, it feels different, and that's what makes it hard. And what I want to remind every single one of you here of is that marketing is nothing more than communication in a different medium and the same principles that apply to connecting with other people in person and how you would connect with someone if you were just walking up to them at a party or at an event. All of that same stuff applies to email marketing, applies to social media content. And I think if you can remember that, really, this is just you having a conversation with your, people who are in your niche. It makes it so much easier. And this is why I'm not going to give you like a template or a script for this. I hate this stuff because templates and scripts and formulas make you try to be someone that you're not and fit your words and your personality and who you are into some rigid box that some business coach says, here's what you need to do. You just plug this in like Mad Libs and now you have your emails. That's not going to work because it's not going to feel like you. So all this being said, in terms of building out your email sequence, your welcome sequence, I recommend just asking yourself the question like, hey, if I was talking to somebody in my niche who I was meeting for the first time, how would that conversation unfold? And in terms of a format more broadly, like I recommend something like this. First email, probably like, here's the freebie, here's the guide that you requested. We start with that. Then email 2, we start to introduce yourself like, hey, nice to meet you. Like, here's my name. Here's kind of what I do over here. And here's how I help people. And then just giving, here's some of my best free content. That's the approach that I take. And just to give you some ideas, I put together a Google Doc here and all of you will have this once we upload this into the portal. I basically just took our welcome sequence that we have in ActiveCampaign, the same exact one that we're using right now. And I just copied and pasted it into here. So you can see all the emails that people get immediately, in our welcome sequence and over the next few days as they warm up, basically, as they go through that welcome sequence. Everything's right here. So you can kind of take this and use this as just encouragement and inspiration. What I don't want you to do is take this and try to use it like Mad Libs and just, copy and paste. Well, Jason said coach is here. Let me just replace this with my niche and let me just copy his words. That doesn't work. Trust me, I've tried it. I did it for years. I tried to do it for years. I think you're better off using this as inspiration and then adopting this to meet your own unique style. And there's no like rigid rules with this stuff. If you remember the principle of like, this is just a welcome sequence to just warm somebody up and introduce them to you, then you'll be fine. So 5 to 7 emails over the first week. Now, almost every email marketing software is going to give you the ability to set this up. And again, this is not like, we're not going into like tech details on this today, but if you just search like the help guides for, ConvertKit and just say, how do I set up like a welcome sequence? Or you can even just like reach out to their support, or there's probably a million YouTube videos. If you just search in like welcome sequence, they might call it something slightly different, but welcome autoresponder or something like that, how to set that up in ConvertKit. You'll be able to find like videos that walk you through in depth, like how to actually do this in that software, depending on what software you're using. Really simple stuff. All you have to do is kind of create the emails and then set them up so that they're basically in a little flow and say, I want this email to go out on day 1 and this email to go out on day 2 and this email to go out on day 3. It's not super complicated. And so that's basically how we set that up. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this free email marketing training. And if you're wanting to dive deeper and you want a roadmap that you can follow as a coach to start to sign 2, 3, 4 or more high-paying coaching clients month after month, I recommend that you download our free client attraction guide by clicking the link above or in the description below. So much good stuff in there to help you get clients consistently, and I'd love to share it with you. So click the link above or below to go check that out. And now let's get back to our training. Any questions y'all have about welcome sequences in general?
It's not necessarily the welcome. Oh, sorry, Anna. So we basically have to have a lot of freebies before we launch this, all of this. I know we have a lot of content that we can reuse, but it's like my content, for example, they're not considered necessarily a freebie, a guide, or a training, or any of the sort.
I would just start with what you have. So even if you don't have like freebies, you can just put together like, what are like my 5 or like my 3 most valuable pieces of content. They're just like posts that I that I, shared on social media, and just start with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then over time you can tweak things and change things and add more. But that I would just recommend, get started with what you have. Even if you can only do like 50% of this, maybe it's only like 3 emails or 4 emails. Just start with that, and then you can build on it over time.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anna, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like me, honestly, 5 to 7 within like the first week seemed like a lot.
Yeah.
Can I just kind of
question.
Can I go with my own, or is there a reason for that?
You can go with whatever you want. And I would encourage you to trust your own intuition and alignment on that. Here's the thing about frequency in terms of email. The first thing is, you send 5 to 7 emails, someone might open like 1 or 2 of them. So I think that's important to remember. It's not like, there are going to be people who open every email, but for the most part, like most emails get buried, they get lost in an inbox. So more frequency is helpful. The second thing, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, in terms of how often you should be emailing your list, I'm going to recommend that you email your list probably a lot more than you're going to feel is reasonable. And you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a lot of emails. But the reason I recommend higher frequency, more touch points, is because the more touch points you create between you and somebody else, the quicker that somebody is going to come to the place where they form an opinion of you, and they either decide this is someone that I want to work with, or this is someone that I need to unsubscribe from. And I want that to happen really fast, because if you don't give somebody enough of those touch points, just like we were talking about with your content, like upping that volume, right? Going from like 3 posts a week to 5 or 7, more of those touch points you have, the faster that process goes. And so I recommend more emails, because it's going to make that process happen faster. And so what I want is for somebody to get like 7 emails from me the first week and say, oh my God, this person's crazy. They're sending me way too many emails. Unsubscribe. Great. We've just sped, like they were going to come to that same conclusion 3 months later if I only sent 1 email a week, versus the person who's the person that I want to pay attention to. There's no amount of time, no amount of emails that would be too many emails for that person. That person's like hanging on my every word because they're immensely interested in what I have to say. So the whole job of my email marketing is to kind of like filter those people out, is to filter out who are the real people that this is for, and who are the people that should just be unsubscribing. And more frequency will make that happen faster. How does that land for you?
Like, I get it, but I'll be honest, like, I'm the type of person, I know I shouldn't judge others based on how I am, but I actually look at all my emails daily. And I've had this happen where you did a summit with some coaches and some time ago, and I actually watched a lot of the videos, and I subscribed to their stuff. And I had this coach that was like incessant, like emails, like literally every day. And while I actually I'm subscribed to lots of coaches just because it's like free content pretty much, I unsubscribed because like it was just too much. Like it just felt like too much. And it's not like, I guess maybe you're right, like I wouldn't have worked with her anyway, but I'm still subscribed to the other. Yeah, but at the same time, I'm still kind of subscribed to the other ones, and they kind of send it like a little bit less frequently, and I enjoy that because I actually read them. I don't know, but I guess it's
I mean, there's pros and cons to this, right? To your point, like, are you going to annoy some people? And there are going to be some people that may have been, a great fit, but maybe felt like there were just too many emails. Yeah, there's going to be that. Like, there's going to be some casualties involved in that. But I still think overall, the broader benefit of getting people to that place faster where they really form a strong opinion of you, this is what we want to do. We want to get off the fence in terms of marketing. Like, I want to be polarizing one way or the other. I want people to either feel like, screw this person, I need to get it out of their world, or, oh my God, I love every single thing that Jason is sharing, I need to work with them. And this is a tool that we can use to create that. And also, feel free to take these suggestions and do whatever you want with them.
No, of course, yeah.
And come up with what feels aligned for you.
Can I just ask a follow-up that's not really related, but kind of?
Sure, yeah.
like, how do you feel about, because like about being like funny in emails, or like, kind of like being a little bit more like funnier and playful rather than like, would that take away from the expert,
Not at
positioning, or
all.
like,
I mean, I want your personality to come through in emails. Boring, like stiff corporate, emails, but nobody wants those.
yeah.
Like I want an email that feels like it comes from a friend. So we'll talk a
Okay.
little bit more about that later on in terms of like what makes a really good email, but absolutely, I would say, bring your personality very much to the table in terms of your emails.
Okay, cool.
And you can still do that and be really funny and also position yourself as an expert. I think
True,
both can
yeah.
coexist.
Yeah.
Let's go to Chase and then we'll go to Cecile and then we're going to move on.
So high level, when you're talking about these email sequences, I didn't hear you say it specifically, but the sense I'm getting from you, Jason, is once you have that lead magnet, they come into your world, they get on your email list. You're using that first week really as like a growth marketing strategy on steroid to really polarize them, get them trained to receive that dopamine hit, and if they're not getting that dopamine hit, they move on. And then after that first week, it transitions from a welcome sequence more to that traditional nurture style that we've talked about before in your trainings.
Exactly.
Is that an accurate way of framing what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
I mean, I think kind of as the welcome sequence is like it's filtering people through. A lot of people, random people are just going to click on your lead magnet. But I want to filter out those people in the first week, like who's really a good fit for my email list versus who just needs to unsubscribe. Let's figure that out really fast. Cecile.
Quick question, and this might be a dumb question, but when we say like sequence, like 5-7 emails, you said over the first week, is it on the first day each person, when the person joined the email list, basically the platform sends automatically an email on the first day for each person, or?
Exactly. So it's basically like an individual journey that every single person goes on. So depending on when I opted in to get your lead magnet, day one of that, I'm going to get one email. Day two, I'm going to get the next email, and it unfolds that way for every single person individually. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's what I thought, but since I didn't get to experience it, I wasn't sure. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Whoops, sorry, I muted myself. Okay, so you've got your welcome sequence here, and you've got some and I'll add this to the portal afterwards so you guys can take a look at mine and use this as model. And I would encourage you that, to Dima's point, like, hey, maybe you don't have all this content that I have, or maybe 7 emails feels like too much. Just start small. And this is something for me, like every couple months I'll revamp and update our welcome sequence. So I've changed it so many times at this point. I'm constantly improving things based on seeing what works and what doesn't. And so this is definitely something that you are going to evolve over time. It's not like we're setting this in stone and it's, never going to be changed. So just start with something and you can always add more later on. Now, going on to Chase's point, what happens after someone actually goes through this welcome sequence? Well, after this, let's say it's, 5 emails, maybe 7 emails. That's the first week. After this, they go into what I call a newsletter pool. And this is kind of like the general pool that everybody gets kind of thrown into after they go through your welcome sequence. And at this point, we're sending out emails to that pool on a weekly basis that are very similar to what you would do on social media. You're basically, nurturing those people on your list, but you're communicating with all of those people in that pool basically at once. Now, to Anna's question and point, how many emails do you send out? What's too much? What do I recommend? I'm going to recommend at least 2 to 3 times a week. We do 3 times a week in our business. And I used to do once a week, and 3 times a week has been much more effective for us. And the good news is a lot of people unsubscribe. That's exactly what I want. And the good news is a lot of people also apply to work with us from those emails. And so I think, going back to that question around frequency, what's too much, that might feel like a lot, but I want to remind you and encourage you to remember that the people who are your people. The people that are going to end up becoming your clients are never going to be the kind of people who are like, you're sending me too many emails. They're going to be the kind of people who are like, I'm reading every single email that you're sending. They're all amazing. I want more. So we have to kind of tailor your communication to the person that you're really trying to connect with and to pull out of all these people who are coming into your world, which is the person that's actually going to end up becoming your client, which is the person who is very interested in every single email and is reading everything that you're putting out because it's relevant and because they find value in it, versus the person who has no idea who you are, doesn't really have a strong opinion to you. That, you know, it's like, I get people every once in a while who are like, you're sending me too many emails. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I can tell you, you're not going to be the person who hires me. So you can unsubscribe. Like, I celebrate that. I want people to unsubscribe from my email list. I think that's a big distinction here. Like, I don't want to just be in this like middle of the road place where I'm only communicating with people enough that like they kind of don't hate me, but they also don't really love me. I want to be polarizing, and frequency creates polarization because it allows somebody to get to know you on a deeper level through more contact. So all this being said, I would say 2 to 3 times a week is a good goal to aim for. Now, you don't have to create like all brand new content for email. You'll see pretty much everything that we send out. And I think many of you are in our newsletter pool, so you're probably getting my regular emails. It's just repurposed content. A lot of it is like, we record YouTube videos, so we just send out links to those videos, or I just repurpose the same stuff that I wrote on social media. So you don't need to come up with like brand new content for your emails. Sometimes it's nice to have, you know, some different stuff going on over in your emails, but you can repurpose a lot and you can get a lot more mileage out of your existing content, and you don't have to like feel like you've got to create all new stuff for different platforms. This can be an easier way of approaching this. And then finally, remember, we talked, you know, quite a bit about these 8 core beliefs. I mean, the key to warming people up is really cycling through those. So just like you would on social media, we're talking about, you know, pain, desire, help, cost, expert, process, objections, timing, those 8 core beliefs. We're integrating those into the emails that you're sending. And so over time, those people who are in your newsletter pool are going to warm up to you through your content and through getting those regular touch points. And also, this is happening, you know, multiple channels. So I think of marketing like you have an ecosystem, which is, it's not like, you know, I mean, it can start like this, where you just have one place that you're communicating with people. But over time, you can maybe have 2 or 3 different places. Like, we have our email list, we've got our social media platforms, and we've got our YouTube channel. And so people are kind of getting you in multiple different places. And that can be helpful and useful too, to have those multiple different touch points, because, you know, some people are going to unsubscribe from your emails and they might never see your emails, but they might be following you on social media. Some people hate social media and they're never going to be on Instagram, but they read all their emails. And so we can have these multiple different places where people can tap in. Some people might see you in both places, which is going to help them warm up to you a lot faster. So that's basically the idea. And then remembering, again, to lead with value. I mean, I would say most of the stuff that we send out to our email newsletter pool is just free, valuable stuff. Lots of free trainings, free resources, helpful tips, and just emails that are designed to just give. And this is, you know, this is how we keep people's attention, as we just give to them, you know, things that they're going to want to pay attention to because they're useful. So that's the idea behind the newsletter pool. So basically, we've got people who are signing up to your email list. They go through that welcome sequence, those first, you know, 5 to 7 emails, and then they get put into your newsletter pool. And then you're sending out, you know, 2-3 emails a week and communicating with that pool of people on an ongoing, regular basis, just like you would on social media. That's the basics on that. Anybody have any questions about anything that we've covered so far? Is this all making sense? Is this clear? Is this helpful? Is this useful? Okay, good. All right, let's move on. Anatomy of a perfect email. Actually, Dima, did you have a question? I saw you pop on video. Okay, good. We'll move on. Anatomy of a perfect email. So to Anna's point earlier, like, what do you say in these emails? How do you communicate? How do you make sure your emails actually get read is really the question. I see a lot of emails. We all get a lot of emails, right? We're overwhelmed with email. So how can you make sure that your emails are the ones that people actually want to open? Well, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. These are some things that I found particularly helpful. The first thing is oftentimes people think that they need to make emails that look like they're sent out by like professional, companies. Like sometimes you get those emails that are like when you buy, I don't know, like a new pair of shoes and you get like the emails from Adidas and it's like they've got all these images in the email and they look like really professionally designed. I don't want you to do that because the truth is those emails look like marketing. And the types of emails that actually get more engagement typically are the ones that look like they're written to you by a friend, which means text, just like you would open up an email and send, an email to a friend and it wouldn't have all sorts of fancy images in it. If you model the way that a friend would communicate to someone, when they see your emails, they feel more like it's a personal interaction and less like it's just this like faceless brand and business that I'm communicating with. And I'm going to be much more likely to engage and read an email when it doesn't have a bunch of images in it. It doesn't look like marketing. Also, that stuff is going to be more likely to be picked up by spam filters. So my suggestion is just remove all the images, anything that's going to make it look like marketing. And you'll see if you get, all of you get my emails if you haven't unsubscribed at this point, and they look like they're written like in Gmail to like, there's no images. It's pretty simple for the most part. I also recommend when you send out emails that, and this is also what I would recommend for social media too, you're always communicating directly to one person. So sometimes I see like emails that are written like to my newsletter subscribers or like to, all the people who are following me. I want you to write to one person and imagine you're just sending an email to one of your ideal clients and communicate as if you and that person were just having a chat. So you'll notice like my emails, I use I and I use you. And it's not like I'm talking to this like broad group of people. I'm talking to one person. And there's a certain level of intimacy that somebody feels like on the other end of that email when you're writing to them that they won't feel if you're just kind of broadcasting like a newsletter or so, like you're treating it more like I'm talking to like a large group of people. Even when you are talking to a large group of people, you're always talking to one person. That's a good tip for like public speaking and things like that. When I used to I was a former president of Toastmasters, and I had a club in Los Angeles that I was leading. And I remember when I would come up and give speeches, I used to always imagine like I'm just talking to one person, and I would move my focus from one person to the other person. It would always be like I was talking one-on-one with one person when I was up there, giving speeches, and that would really help. Also, making these things casual and conversational. To Anna's point, like this does not have to feel like super stiff and formal. I want it to feel like I'm getting an email. If I'm getting an email from you, like you're more of like a friend. We still want that expert positioning, but to Anna's point, like things like humor and just like writing casually and conversationally, like that stuff is really important. So don't make it feel like it's stiff, like make it loose and friendly. Also, if there's one thing to focus on, we talked about like headlines earlier and naming your lead magnet. Subject lines. People don't pay enough attention to these things. The subject line is like 80% responsible for whether or not someone's actually going to open the email. And you could have the best email in the world, but if your subject line sucks, no one's actually going to read it. So making sure that subject line is juicy enough that someone's actually going to want to click on it. And there are lots of different approaches for writing really good subject lines, pretty similar to how you would write like headlines or naming things. It's all kind of the same approach. We have a new training that we added last week to our portal called it's called Capturing Attention. I would recommend reviewing it because inside that training, you'll find some of the foundations for writing really good subject lines and just in general, how to create content that really captures attention and gets somebody engaged in the first place. A couple of other things in terms of emails. When you are adding links, add links multiple times. The more links you add in an email, the more likely somebody is to click on something. So for example, you'll often see like in my emails, let's see, I'm trying to find a good example. So here's an example. Here's an email where I kind of break my rule. I include a little screenshot here. So that being said, it's basically an email that's like a pitch to a training. And you'll notice I actually have 3 links in this email, and they're all going to the same page. But I link this up multiple different times in that actual email versus just having one link at the bottom of the email. You're going to get a lot more people to click through on things if you provide multiple places in the email that they can click. So that's a little hack. Also, just in general, my approach for writing copy online is I always prefer to use short, choppy lines versus big blocks of text. People skim today, and our attention span is so short that if I get an email from you that's got like paragraphs of text that I have to read that makes it look like a novel, you've already lost me, because I'm on to the next thing. Like I don't want to work. When I'm going through my email inbox, like I've probably got like 2,000 emails I'm clearing out. Like I'm stressed out going through that experience, and I want something that's easy to consume. So if you look at my emails, you'll see I use a lot of like really short, choppy sentences, a lot of ellipses to break things up. Excuse me. And that really helps in terms of just making things readable. Because when you see this and you see this first line in late 2021, I met Andrea, ... Now I'm like, well, who's Andrea? And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should read the second line. And then, okay, well, maybe I should read the third line and the fourth line. It makes it really easy. And suddenly you've got me hooked because I've read like 5 or 6 lines and I'm not going to stop reading at this point. Versus if I were to just put this all into one paragraph, it probably wouldn't get read because it would look too overwhelming. So short, choppy lines, and this is also for social media, for pretty much any content online. I recommend using short, choppy lines. And again, those emails that I linked up that you guys will have shortly, the welcome sequence, you can kind of take a look through all of these and just see how I'm communicating, and you'll be able to see some of these principles at play. So that would be helpful to review as well as you're working on your emails and working on getting better at writing emails and creating emails. Anybody have any questions about how to create really good emails, how to write the perfect email, how to write emails that get clicks and that get opened?
Hey, Jason, I have a quick question or a quick comment.
Sure. Yeah, what's up, Eric?
This is it's interesting because this I guess method is maybe a little bit opposite to like what I guess we have been kind of taught to do, I guess, with the sending out newsletters, emails, or whatever for the past like 10 years. And I'm wondering if that's, and you can offer your insight too, but is that just psychologically people have just associated like huge images and everything in newsletters with marketing now because that's become such the norm, and like now people are gravitating toward just reading text now as opposed to wanting to see all of like the images and stuff? Because I feel like at first, like when email marketing first came out, I think people wanted to see images and people wanted to see like visual representations of things. And so I'm curious if the trend is changing.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, in general with marketing, there's always this zigzag thing happening because in order to get attention, one of the best ways to get attention is you have to do something different. Because if your thing is like everybody else's thing, is just going to get, at a certain point, like people become so accustomed to seeing a certain thing in a certain context that it gets overlooked. And people have gotten so many marketing emails from big companies with these big, branding photos and things like that, that instantly when I see an email like that, in my mind, the context that I put on it is I'm being marketed to, which means it's going to be put in my spam folder, or I'm just going to archive it. It's not going to get read, versus something that looks like it's written, by a person to me. I'm much more likely to actually open it. So in a certain sense, I think, like, to your point, I agree with you. Like it's because so many people have sent out those kinds of emails that our minds start to associate certain things mean certain things. Like, oh, when I get an email that looks like this, it means it's marketing. Same thing with social media content. Like a lot of how you stand out on social media is How do we make it not look like it's marketing? How do you use, like we talk about, like selfies and things like that in content? Because anything that looks overly polished or overly professional, when somebody actually looks at it, they're like, well, I'm being marketed to. Like, I don't want to be marketed to when I'm on social media. I don't want to be marketed to in my inbox. So in a certain sense, yes, like we're always looking at like, what is the predominant way that people are communicating? What are the assumptions that people are going to make about how I'm communicating based on how something looks or how something's presented? And how can I play against those assumptions in order to make sure that I stand out and cut through that wall or that barrier that might be holding me back from really being able to connect with the person that I'm trying to reach?
Yeah,
how does that land for you?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Just really interesting to hear your thoughts too. So
Sure. Yeah, great question. I appreciate you sharing that. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this free email marketing training. And if you're wanting to dive deeper and you want a roadmap that you can follow as a coach to start to sign 2, 3, 4 or more high-paying coaching clients month after month, I recommend that you download our free client attraction guide by clicking the link above or in the description below. So much good stuff in there to help you get clients consistently, and I'd love to share it with you. So click the link above or below to go check that out. And now let's get back to our training. We're gonna move on, and we're pretty much at the end. So celebrating all of you for being here and for being engaged, because I know it's a lot of information. And I tried to include as much as we possibly could while hopefully not making it super overwhelming here. So the last thing I want to talk about is metrics, which is as you start sending out emails in your email software, you're going to start seeing that, all of these email platforms have a place where you can look at the metrics for each of your emails. And there are different metrics that it will give you, like things like open rate and click rate and unsubscribe rate and things that, you'll be able to look at on an email by email basis. And those can be useful pieces of information, and they can also be not super useful pieces of information. So I want to talk for a couple minutes about metrics, and then we'll close things out with some questions. The first thing I want to say is just with metrics in general, my recommendation is you take metrics with a grain of salt. I think these numbers can be useful, but they can also lead you astray. And it's important to balance the focus on the data with more of the focus on more of the things that might not actually show up in the data, which are easy to overlook. And this also applies to social media and really any form of content. For example, you might be able to write an email, and like if I send an email out right now to my list that it was just like, click this, and that was all it said in the email, I'd probably have a click-through rate that was like 50%. Like a ton of people would actually click on that. But is there any use to having all those clicks? Like those people had no idea what they were clicking on. Those people, there was no context around that click. It's not useful, valuable traffic. Those people are probably going to go to the page and they're going to click away right away because there was no reason for them to actually click that, right? So on one hand, I could look at that email, and if I was just looking at my email marketing software, I might say, wow, that's a big success. I got all these clicks. But on the other hand, if I actually took it one level deeper and asked myself like, well, did that actually help me move my business forward or get more leads or get more sales calls or sign more clients? Probably didn't give me, anything that I actually really wanted. And so, the same thing goes for social media, right? You can create a reel that gets like 1 million views, but if 999,000 of those people are not even in your niche, then it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't actually help you as a business owner. And so you might look at that reel and you're like, wow, I'm getting all these views. This is awesome. But at the end of the day, it's not actually taking you any closer to where you want to be. So this is where metrics, I think, can be useful in some ways, but they can also be deceiving. And I want to remind all of us here to take these numbers with a grain of salt. Now that doesn't mean you don't pay attention to them, because they can give you some helpful information, but they're not like the end all be all. And there are definitely certain times that I pay a lot of attention to the numbers, and there are other times that I might balance that with more of my intuition. And it's important in more of the qualitative sense of what I have for what's going on. It's important to have both of those things. So probably the 3 most important metrics that you can pay attention to. First is open rate. How many people actually opened your email? So you send an email to 100 people If 50 people opened it, you have a 50% open rate. That's basically how that's measured. So this is basically a measure in many cases of how good your subject line is, and also how relevant your emails are in general to your list. The other thing that makes this a little bit tricky is over the past 2 years, 3 years, Apple has put in all sorts of new privacy features on their phones and in their email software that basically make it impossible for email marketers like you and me to figure out whether or not someone really opened an email. So as a result, if your email ends up in someone's inbox and they're on an Apple device, it will count all of those opens as, 100%, even if somebody didn't actually open the email. So this is getting harder to even track. And I think we are moving more and more towards a world where this is more likely to be the case across the board, where it's actually going to be more difficult as more of these platforms and tools start to integrate more and more privacy features to even figure out, like, are people really opening my emails? So right now, this metric is a little bit tricky. There's still value in paying attention to it, but it's going to overweight your open rates because all the people who have Apple devices who are receiving your emails is going to count as opened, even if they actually didn't. In general, a good metric for open rate, good benchmark would be above 25% for your list. Say if you're doing that, our email open rates across our lists are, I think it's probably around like 35 to 40%. Now that's counting like Apple opens. So we don't know exactly like what the number is. It's probably closer to like 30 to 35%. Hard to know exactly what that number is, but I would say anything above 25% is like, you're doing a pretty good job. Generally, when you first start your email list, by the way, open rates, click-through rates, everything's going to be way higher. You're going to be like, wow, I'm doing amazing. And then as your list grows, as more people start signing up for your list starts to age, and people start to drop off, and so those numbers are gonna decrease. That's also normal. Now, in terms of if you are sending emails out to specific segments of your list, this is when these numbers might be significantly higher. Like, for example, if I send an email out just to our customers, we might have 80-90% of those people actually open the email. So part of this depends on who you're actually sending your emails to, and if you're sending them to everyone, you can expect lower open rates. But if you're sending them more to a specific group of people on your email list, then those email open rates might be higher. So that's open rates. Click rates. Second metric I pay attention to is basically how many people that you sent the email to actually clicked on the email. Pretty simple. So if I sent an email to 100 people and 5 people clicked on the link in that email, then it would be a 5% open rate, or a click rate, excuse me. Anything above 1% on your emails is usually pretty good for list wide. And again, if you're sending emails out to like specific segments of your list, those numbers are typically going to be much higher. And finally, unsubscribe rate is the number of people that unsubscribe from an email. So, obviously we want to keep these numbers on the lower side. Like if you're seeing a lot of unsubscribes from an email, that might be like a big red flag. At the same time, it can actually be a good thing sometimes. Like if I'm sending out an email that's more polarizing, I expect that more people are going to unsubscribe. If I send out an email that talks about my specific values or something that I know is going to draw certain people to me and push other people away, it's normal to see more unsubscribes on those kinds of emails, but that might be exactly what you want. But in general, anything less than 0.5% on an email, I would say is pretty good. Want to be careful at like too high unsubscribes generally mean like, something's wrong. But that's something to pay attention to as well. And again, all these metrics, take them with a grain of salt. Something to pay attention to, but don't get too fixated on these things because there's a lot of information that is not captured through these numbers. And at the end of the day, a lot of this is about using your gut and being able to tap into your intuition and a lot of the things that aren't going to show up on paper, and to merge those with the numbers and to use both of those things to help you make better decisions. So that pretty much sums up my spiel on Email Marketing 101. That's all I have for you guys today. And I'd love to wrap us up with opening up for some Q&A. And then we can close things out with some takeaways. So we'll start with open questions. Anybody have any questions about email marketing in general, anything we've covered email marketing across the board. Harry says, 2 questions. Do you think the day of the week is important when sending out emails? Do you scrub your subscribers, i.e. manually remove people who do not open? Good questions. So the first thing is, day of the week is important. Part of this depends on your specific niche. Like there are certain types of niches that might be more available on weekdays versus weekends, or weekends versus weekdays. Generally, what I find is when you send out emails on weekdays, your open rates are going to be typically higher than they are on weekends. More people are around, they're checking their inbox more on weekdays than on weekends, but your click-through rates are going to be lower than they are on weekends. Because on weekends, people have a lot more time on their hands. So they've got, the flexibility to be able to click on things and explore things. So sometimes it's great to send out, things like trainings and stuff like that on weekends, because people might actually be more likely to watch them and check them out versus, something on a weekday where it might not get as much visibility. In general, I do much of my communication, most of my communication on weekdays. Like we send out our newsletter pool emails Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But if I do like launches and stuff like that, I'll often send out emails. Like if it's in the middle of launch, I might send out an email on a Saturday or Sunday or something like that. So I think that's fair game as well. And then to your point on scrubbing subscribers, I'm glad you brought this up. This was the one thing that I was like, should I include this? But I feel like it's a little bit more for people who are a little bit further along. But this is something that's really important. And the thing to remember about email marketing is when you are building an email list, you are also building a reputation with all of the people in not the people, but the services that are receiving your emails. So if you think about how Gmail works and it's mostly Gmail, but Yahoo and all these other services, they're all basically the same. They have a spam filter, right? And you'll notice that certain emails that get sent to you end up in spam, and certain emails get sent in your inbox, and certain emails get sent into the promotions folder, and certain emails end up in your primary tab. So all of these services basically use all sorts of data to figure out, where to end up putting an email. But one of the things they look at is how healthy your communication is to your subscribers and the people who are actually you're communicating with. So in other words, if you've got an email list of a bunch of people who maybe signed up like 2-3 years ago, and you're still sending emails to them, but they're not even opening those emails, that's going to drag down your reputation score with these providers, which means your messages are more likely to go into spam or more likely to go into promotions. So one of the best things that you can do is be particularly aggressive at removing people from your email list who have not been opening emails or not been clicking on emails. And what I do for this is, and most of these email software tools have, there's ways that you can do this inside their platforms. We have what's called a re-engagement sequence that goes out. So if someone basically hasn't read an email or hasn't clicked on an email in like 30 days, they get put into like a sequence that's like, hey, are you still around? And then if they don't click on those emails, then they get unsubscribed from the list. So I'm very aggressive at removing people who have not been engaging because my reputation score and that score is very important, and we want to make sure as many people as possible actually receive our emails. So you can do something like that. A lot of these platforms also have like engagement management tools that you can run that will basically just do a scan of your list, and they'll allow you to like manually unsubscribe like all the people who maybe haven't engaged in like 30 days or 60 days or something like that. I would definitely recommend doing that as a part of like an ongoing maintenance strategy to make sure your list is healthy and that you're continuing to keep your open rates high enough where your emails are not going to run afoul of any of these, platforms and services. Is that helpful? Cool. Other questions?
I have a question. So I think I'm still traumatized from being banned from ConvertKit. But the point with that is I'm about to do ActiveCampaign, and actually this lecture is really good because I'm about to also kind of revise my freebie because I think I might want to just change a few things in it. But my point was, Oh my gosh, what was my point? I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Okay, so how do I oh, okay, I remembered. So when I was with ConvertKit, they actually asked you to put on your socials links, like your Instagram's links, I think it's part of the verification.
Mm-hmm.
Does that have anything to do with me getting banned at all?
I don't think so. ActiveCampaign, I don't think they do anything like that. I don't remember going through any process like that when I set things up. I mean, there is like other verification that you can do with like your domain name and things like that. We're not getting into the weeds on the advanced stuff, today, but I don't think you're going to run into that with ActiveCampaign. I wouldn't worry about it.
Or if I do, can I just leave it out, like as if I don't have it? Like if they do ask for socials.
I don't think they will. Yeah, I've never experienced that on ActiveCampaign.
Okay. And just
you'll be okay.
So any final words on, like, again, not getting in the spam? Like, I just don't know what I was doing wrong. So I just really don't want to burn through another platform.
I think it's unlikely to happen, especially knowing what I know about how you were showing up. There's always, the thing about all of these platforms is that they all have like auto systems set up on the back end it's just like credit card companies, like you ever get like you're trying to like buy something online and you get like your card, flags it as fraud, even though this happens all the time to me when we're signing people up for our programs, like maybe 10-20% of the time, like I'll be checking out with someone and their card, will be declined because their credit card company flags it as fraud. It's the same thing with these email marketing software services. A lot of people use these tools to like spam lots of people. So they have to have some measures in place to protect that stuff. And most of the time, 99% of the time, those tools work the way that they should. But sometimes there are people like you who just end up like, because some weird thing got triggered on the back end and we just don't entirely know exactly what it is because they're not going to tell you. Unfortunately, because some weird thing got triggered, you kind of ended up being a casualty to that. But I think that you're unlikely to encounter that again, I guess is my point. I think it would be exceedingly rare. And I would just say, being careful in terms of the emails that you're sending out, like not anything that would be obviously like flagged as spam. But beyond that, I think you're probably going to be fine. And I can't imagine that you will end up in this situation again.
Fingers crossed.
And if not, we can just move on to the next one. You can be like speed dating for email marketing services.
I really don't want to do that because it took me a while to create a really nice landing page on ConvertKit and I really liked it. And then I got Emily to test it and the next day I was like out. So
yeah. So we will be thinking about you as you step forward in this next stage of your journey and praying for a smooth transition to the next one. All right. Any other questions about email marketing? All right. So why don't we do this before we hop off? And I just want to say I'm thrilled that we're like right at the hour. Like this, normally I run way over. So I'm celebrating that I managed to fit it in here. So before you all go, I want to know from those of you who are here live, what was your number one biggest takeaway from our session today? What's one thing that you're going to apply or integrate, or one thing that you learned that you think was most valuable or useful? Or just hop in, raise your hand, or just unmute your mic. Harry.
Well, I thought that perhaps once a week was a bit too much and that people would be annoyed and unsubscribed. I thought, oh no, my list numbers are going to go down. Horrible defeat. But I like your idea of either get to know me and like me quick, or we're not for each other and unsubscribe. I really like that, particularly because we have various tiers of payment for my subscriber list. So if they're not going to buy, they might as well come off and I won't incur more charges as hopefully as the list grows. So I think that's been the biggest change in my thought about this. My worry now is to find time and content to produce 3 newsletters a week.
Well, we're going to work on that piece with you.
It's really tonight. It's midnight here in the UK, and I'm just about to go to bed now. I'm going to have a nightmare about 3 every week, and I'm finding it hard to do 2, 1 a week. And I thought that was, let's face it, I was doing 1 a month, and I thought that was about right. But 3 a week. Oh.
Yeah, good. Well, we're going to work on that together, and I appreciate you sharing that takeaway, and also appreciate you staying up as always and making these later sessions.
I'm a morning person, so by the time I get to midnight, I just don't make sense. I'm not sure I'm talking properly down here.
You very much are, my friend.
Okay, well,
all right.
That's been really, really very good. Complete mindset change.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad, and thanks for joining us, and I hope you sleep well and have a good night rest too. All right, other big takeaways. Renee.
So I have so many notes here, but I think the one that I'm going to implement right away is for my lead magnet to put the emotion in the title of it.
Yeah, good one. I think that'll really help.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah, glad to see you here. Other big takeaways.
Dima.
No, go ahead, Anna. I'll let you go first this time.
You guys can both go. Let's start with Dima, and then we'll go to Anna.
Okay, so it's not one takeaway, but I'm pretty sure there's so much value in this that I will listen to it again and take notes again, and then other questions are going to come up. I just want to take some time to thank you for your generosity, Jason. Like I never miss none of these trainings, and they're so valuable. And I just want to let you know something funny. We're at a point in my family where they recognize your voice without seeing the screen. Seeing at which meeting mom is at, they say, "Is this Jason?" Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Well, thank you. That makes me feel really good, and I love getting to share this. I mean, it's just so cool, and I think all of us are here for the same reason, because you all have something so unique and so valuable to be able to give, and there's nothing more fulfilling to be able to give that, and to see like that other people are actually finding it helpful. Like, I would do this for free, so I appreciate you sharing that. That definitely made me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So thank you, Dima. Anna, let's go over to you.
Oh, that was so sweet. I was just going to say about headlines, how important they are, again, in every aspect in terms of the lead magnet, as well as the titles of emails. And it's so true, because yeah, that's a big one. We can all, I think, focus more on that, myself included.
Other big takeaways.
For me, it's really to keep it simple. And I knew that already, but I just feel like it's a good reminder to keep everything simple when it comes to the sentence, just separate things, and also saying I, you, and speak to them like it's a friend. It's just something that sticks to me today. So thank you so much. There's so much more, but it's the one that I'm picking right now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. And to your point on simplicity too, something I also want to reflect back to everyone is, that welcome sequence piece is also something that you can build in over time. So it might be easier to just get started if you don't have any email marketing going right now. You want to get started, just get started, and you can just start sending out broadcast emails, and then you can build in that welcome sequence later on. It's definitely not something you have to have when you launch, but it can be something that you add on later. Other big takeaways.
I think for me, that is one of my biggest takeaways. At some points I was thinking, oh, I've got so much to do before I can start. But no, I can start and then evolve. So that's reassuring. But the other one was around focusing on the emotion and the huge difference around, overcoming overwhelm versus here, 10 practical tips for caregivers. So
yeah, it's a good one. As you're saying that, I'm like, where can I do more of that? This has been a big breakthrough for me. I've been going through Tony Robbins' personal power program this past week, which if you've never been through it, it's great. I've been through it multiple times. And, really it's really grounded me back in the real value of connecting into those emotional triggers and and how so much of marketing is emotional. And I get very heady sometimes about things too, but really be able to ground back into like, what is that emotion, that we're helping somebody overcome or feel better, whatever it is, like super powerful stuff. Marketing is meant to be emotional.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Nadie. Any other takeaways?
I like the idea that it's more powerful to use your call to action instead of to redirect them to a different nurture platform, to just get them right into your world and get them right into something valuable for whatever your lead magnet is. I appreciated that advice.
Cool. Yeah, glad that resonated. Any other big takeaways before we wrap up? Last call for takeaways. All right, we're going to call it a wrap for tonight. So great job, everyone. I'm celebrating you for making it through. This stuff is a lot. And just want to leave everyone with that reminder to, Nadine's point, and Cecile's point, keep it simple. Sometimes you can go to a training like this and it's like, oh my God, I feel like there's so many things I got to do, right? But what is that one next action step that you can take? And just moving through it like that and asking yourself, what do I focus on next is a great way to cut through the overwhelm. And we just take it one step forward at a time, and all these things will you can build on over time. That's how I've done it. So you might look at me right now and you're like, oh my God, Jason's got all these pieces, but definitely didn't start like that. It was something, that I kind of added on piece by piece and built, piece by piece over time. So great call today, everyone. I hope you all have an awesome weekend, and looking forward to seeing you next week. And this will be in the portal shortly with all the resources as well. So look out for that, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. I hope you enjoyed this free email marketing training. And if you love this video, you're definitely going to love that one too. So click the link on the screen to go check that out, and I'll see you in the next video.